Right there. All right, we're going to get back to the president's speech now. He delivered his fifth State of the Union address last night. Joining me this morning with a recap is political consultant Mindy Fletcher. Good morning. Is that fifth or sixth? Sixth, right? Yeah, I think fifth was wrong. So, your thoughts, first of all, just overall on what the president had to say.
I think he did what he needed to do. You know, I don't think people had a lot of high expectations because he had a rough year last year. But I think he sort of stepped out. He put some bold ideas forward and talked about how he was going to get through this, what I think is going to be a tough political year for them.
You know, I asked Congressman Duncan Hunter a moment ago, and I'll ask you the same thing. Do you have a problem with him saying, okay, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to start signing executive orders?
You know what I found interesting about that is there's a lot of talk this morning about him going it alone. But each of those things he talked about, he cited other people who were doing it as well. When he talked about minimum wage, he talked about him doing it for contracting at the federal level, but he also talked about different states that had already enacted it, and he had in the gallery a private sector business that had already done it. So I think he did a good job of balancing. It's not just me saying I'm going to do it because I think it's a good idea. It's me, along with a lot of other people in the country who also think it's a good idea.
Yesterday, the White House made a big deal out of him signing the one that talked about federal workers. It doesn't affect a whole lot of people, but he wants to do it across the board. Is that possible in this country without putting a lot of small businesses out of business?
I think so. I think small business is where he's going to have a problem. But if he focuses on big business, he focuses on people who are making a lot of profits, and we're seeing the erosion of the middle class, a lot of people who are not making very much money, and a lot of people who are making a lot of money. I think if he focuses on that theme throughout this campaign year, we have to remember this is a campaign year, so all of this is sort of probably tested highly and focused into, can I get away with this in a campaign year, and will I back my people up who are on the ballot? I think he'll be fine. I think sort of focusing on, there's a middle class out there that is eroding and dying, and they don't have enough money to get by, and it shouldn't be that way.
Talk about immigration reform. He certainly wants to make that one of his legacies.
Yes. I think focusing on that, a lot of people, even this morning, the pundits in Washington are still saying that's the one thing they feel like actually might get done this year. Obviously an important issue to San Diego with a lot of the tech companies that we have here. It's a lot of the CEOs from companies here have been traveling back there and talking to Washington about that. So I think it's a good sign that a lot of people are still very hopeful that may get done this year.
What else did you see that'll be affecting San Diego?
There were a couple of things I thought were interesting. He talked about these manufacturing hubs for high-tech manufacturing.
Right.
And he said there are 2 of them now. There is a bill for a couple of more, and if you do even more, I can put even more out there. And I think for San Diego, that's something for us to get behind. That's something for this community in order to create middle-class jobs and do something in an industry that we're already a leader in. It would be very smart of us to sort of take advantage of that and step out with that. He talked about pre-K education and universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds. That's something that's actually being discussed in Sacramento. It's going to be a big issue in California this year. They're trying to make that the standard in California. Immigration reform was another thing I think was important to San Diego. Talked about putting broadband in schools, 15,000 schools. That's another thing I think San Diego is well equipped for and should take advantage of. And so there were a lot of things that to me I thought, as he said them, this is a kind of a unique State of the Union for San Diego. There's a lot to take advantage of here if we're smart.
Do you see any bipartisanship in the next 3 years, or is this just going to get as ugly as it has been?
It's hard to tell. I think with the end of the healthcare debate, or waning.
Are we there?
Waning.
Okay.
Healthcare debate. That's what's been so vitriolic. But the problem is this is an election year. Everyone's on the ballot.
Sure.
So you're not going to be able to do anything without it being seen through the prism of your election back home. So everyone in Washington is going to be focused on that. They're not going to be willing to compromise a lot. So I'm not as hopeful, now as we get into the final years, because even when you get through this year, next year, it's the beginning of the presidential campaign. And so you've kind of hit the end. I think he's going to have to be really creative about how to bring people together. He's going to have to pick the issues well, message them well, and find the right people in Congress that are willing to cross party lines.
Mindy Fletcher, thank you so much for your opinions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Well, we'll be right back in just a moment. You're watching Good Morning San Diego. Much more to come.